So we're live on YouTube now, as far as I know. So for everyone who's joining us, welcome. I think by now you know that you can type your questions in the chat box and we'll ask them of Dr. Manek at the end of her presentation. And if you're on YouTube, go ahead and type in the chat as well, and Mary will text me your questions. So good evening and welcome again to tonight's presentation. My name is Judy Kitt. I'm the president of the Foundation for Mind Being Research, or FMBR. And for those few I know who are new to us, I just want to let you know that we've been around for 41 years. We were founded in 1980 by scientists and artists and healers who were interested in looking at the nature of human consciousness, exploring through the lens of science and spirituality and ancient wisdom traditions. So for 41 years now, we've been one of those groups, one of those organizations who are helping to create a cultural shift, this cultural shift that's underway, trying to get away from this reductionist view of the world, of reductionist thinking, and trying to understand the full range of human experience and the nature of reality. What we're really been interested in is bridging science and spirituality, which is what we're here to talk about this evening with Dr. Manek. So you can check us out at fmbr.org and on YouTube at FMBR TV. So we're honored to welcome back to Dr. Nisha Manek to speak with us this evening in her second presentation of her now three-part series on bridging science and spirituality. And I'll remind you that Dr. Manek is an alumnus of the Mayo Clinic's Division of Rheumatology and an internationally recognized leader of integrative medicine. In her commitment to innovative approaches to health and wellness, she seeks to synthesize and unify her work as a physician and scientist with spiritual inquiry and practice. Related to the subject of consciousness and healing, Nisha moderated His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama's visit to the Mayo Clinic in 2008. She's a fellow of the American College of Physicians and the Royal College of Physicians of the United Kingdom. So Nisha, we're really grateful to have you back. Can't wait to hear the continuation of your exploration of work with, Dr. Tiller's work and the implications for the future of medicine.
Yeah, well, it's just absolutely delightful to be again with you, Judy and Mary. I know Mary's in the YouTube section. And so, hello, friends. I can't see everyone, but that's okay. The date today is June 11. So in my excitement, I didn't change the first slide. And I'm doing something very ambitious. And I realized when Mary, invited me, Mary and Judy, that I thought I could do this in 1 or 2 talks. I told Judy, it's not possible. I need a third one. And even then, but in any case, at least to give you all a juice, a taste of what magnificent science Tiller did and how it contributes powerfully to the shift that Judy's talking about. We're going to talk about consciousness inclusive science. So this is Bill Tiller, my mentor and friend, and he was at Stanford for many years, chairman of the Department of Materials Science and Engineering. So he has a very amazing mindset, not just mathematical, but he was an engineer, so he could see the connections. That's how his mind works. How do you join things up so you have a bigger understanding of nature? And I hooked up with him, and after a great many months, I took a trip from Minnesota, and he's currently in Scottsdale, Arizona. He's 93 and was experimenting until until 91 years of age, so about till 2 years ago. And this session, I'm going to show you a little window into his mind, into his spirituality. So you're talking about a magnificent scientific mind who reached deep into his heart and really asked the question, what is a human being really? And can we show this under lab conditions? And what Tiller is really doing is giving a modern taste of that mystical tradition that we are much more. And Master Jesus would say, know thyself. Know thyself. So Tiller gives us a window in the scientific realm of who we are and what we are capable of. And last time in session 1, I did ask, how can you have a mathematical connection between intention, which is consciousness tool, and its effect? And I didn't go too much into it last time, and I realized it would be nice to do that. And I said the answer is energy. Energy is really one of our currencies to make things run in nature. And energy is the connection with information. And I didn't go into that, but I'd like to talk about this and unpack it a little bit more. We're familiar with matter, and matter is very important because it's tangible. We can see it, we can measure it, we can weigh it, we take its temperature, we describe its color, we smash it to bits at the CERN in Switzerland. That's matter. But we also know energy. And Einstein, our genius Einstein, said matter and energy are on equivalent platform. And they're connected with the E equals mc squared. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. So this is the famous relationship. But Tiller is really asking, do we stop here? And where does consciousness fit in that energy equation? And so I come into this tremendous, amazing science, and it's not a theory. It's the law. It's the laws of nature we're going to talk about. And scientists trust these laws more than any other. It's been called the scientific equivalent of Shakespeare. But the good news is you don't need mathematics to understand the concepts. Once you get the relationships of the terms of the scientific law I'm about to show you, you can understand a lot around you. It really changed my perspective. And just like a Shakespeare play, you had big names and great drama around the second law. And some of you will recognize James Maxwell, for example, who unified magnetism and electricity into electromagnetism. You'll recognize Ludwig Boltzmann, who showed that actually, when we're seeing a big system, we're really looking at an average behavior. We're looking at probabilities. Okay, so that was Ludwig Boltzmann. And Willard Gibbs, Gibbs free energy, and so on. Rudolf Clausius coined the term entropy. Entropy is that transformation from one form of energy to another, but you get disorder along the way. You lose some energy in that process. All right, so this was my first lesson in thermodynamics. This is Tiller's writing. He writes in this capitalized, and I remember this when he wrote it out, I thought, oh no. but I assure you, it's not a how-to. I don't want you to know all this math, but rather what it's all about, how those terms play into what we see around us, and especially how it links to consciousness and intention. So this is the second law of thermodynamics. This is the only equation I promise you'll ever see. Gibbs free energy, G, equals PV, pressure times volume, plus internal energy, E, minus temperature times entropy, okay? Any of these terms, if they're greater than 0, can do useful work. This is engines, okay? And thermodynamics was based in the steam engine era. So any term greater than 0 will lead to useful work. And it's good to have this, just this basic principle in your mind. This was the era of steam engines, okay? And steam engines, we know, pressure times volume makes that enormous engine run, and really changed. We weren't just doing horse and buggy. We went into the steam engine era, and it was the Industrial Revolution. Quite amazing. This was the Victorian age, but really changed the face of how human beings interact and even travel and so on. But then the real question is, how does that steam engine science relate to the brain? And I put the brain, and I said in session 1, consciousness is not just your head, but I put it here just to communicate, okay, because we need something visible. So consciousness is invisible. So can intention then be a source of free energy? That's the basic question we're up against, okay? I'm going to close my window because my neighbor's dog is very enthusiastic. So just a moment. Zeus. That was Zeus barking away. So can intention be a source of free energy? That's a critical question. So in other words, can you expand this mass-energy relationship with consciousness? This is what Tiller is really asking for. And you know, as a physician, when I looked at the thermodynamics, it occurred to me the PV, if we just look at pressure and volume relationship, when you play music, the sound waves actually cause pressure on the eardrum, and that pressure triggers a whole set of nerve or electrical impulses in the inner ear and then the brain, and that's actually PV term. Acupressure, when you're pressing on certain points on your body, that's really triggering a whole host of impulses in the body and healing responses. So of course, EFT, when people are tapping, that's actually a pressure and volume term also, and leads to delta G, or Gibbs free energy. So just to give you a notion that it's not just the steam engine, thermodynamics is very fundamental to the body and very fundamental to integrative modalities. And once we know energy medicine and all these various types of energy medicine, it's nice to step back and say, well, where do they fit into the second law? Which term does it change? Acupuncture changes the internal the E, or internal energy term. I took out one of the slides, which was TS, hot water bottles. It's heat, and that also is healing. So, but anyway, just a TS term. Where does drugs fit in? And that's actually internal energy E as well. It affects the chemical potentials of the cells and makes things happen. Okay, so that's drugs. But it's this term, S, or entropy, or disorder, which is very interesting. And S is related to a temperature, or T. Things are moving around in that steam engine, okay, bouncing around, causing pressure and making that engine run. But it also turns out that entropy is intimately connected with information. Okay, this has now been shown. Claude Shannon described information, and later on it was shown that any time you create information, you create order, you create coherence, all right? So as a physician, when I first heard this energy and information, I thought, well, how do I really grasp this? And so this is a very famous quantum mechanic physicist, Erwin Schrödinger, and actually in his book, What is Life? He makes a very interesting suggestion. He says life maintains itself on low entropy. And he goes on to say, in addition to energy content of food, it would be helpful to have its entropy value also. Now, whenever we look at a wrapper of food, we see kilocalories, we see energy content. So I thought, what does this really mean? Okay, so I'm going to show you a series of slides that helps you connect energy and information. We know this experiment, you can have your total energy requirement by eating French fries. Morning, afternoon, evening. You can get your energy equivalent using one food. But practically speaking, we all know this is going to lead to entropy and disorder and disease. Okay, so energy, 2,000 calories with just French fries all the time is going to lead to disease. All right, it's going to lead you to a highly disordered state and high entropy. So what if we did the same experiment with cauliflower? Similarly, and I think you can already appreciate this, you can have the same energy equivalent eating cauliflower morning, noon, and night, but you're missing crucial information, and you can run into high entropy or disorder and disease. You can do grapefruit diets. I gave in my book examples of grapefruit and chocolate, but the point here is this gives a whole meaning to low entropy diet, a well-balanced diet. And this notion of entropy and Erwin Schrödinger's sort of statement made me really step back and really realize that low entropy diet means it's information rich. Information rich. You need carbohydrates, you need proteins, you need the fats, you need the colors, you need the minerals and the vitamins. You need that well-balanced diet that is rich in information. So, but here's another way to look at it. Okay, so this is the Tiller home office. Lots of things everywhere, books, okay? And if you wanted to sort this office out and put the things away, you can use energy. You put the books away here, put things away there, magazines, all of it. So you can use energy, but you need information to know what goes where. And I think, again, it's a simple cartoon, but help me understand. Energy, information, always connected. All right. So when we are talking about matter and energy, information is even more fundamental in nature. And in Bridging Science and Spirit, I really go into Claude Shannon, and information is the irreducible bit. You have 0 and 1 if you really go into binary units, okay? But for the purposes of our discussion today, I didn't want to go too much there because I want to give you a general sense of how these things are related. Now, information, it's us who are the source of that. We're creating all the time. We create music, we create equations, we create relationships, we create poetry. We look up in the night sky and we start to organize it into constellations. So we're doing it. Human consciousness is the source of that information and organization. So another way to look at intention is that you have a specific aim, a very focused aim or purpose. That's a dictionary version. And Tiller says intention, yes, it's a name, but it is a process of creation. And I really like this definition because our intention is wrapped into everything we do. Coming here, creating these slides, choosing colors. It was my intention not only to inform, but to engage you folks. So let's look at the creation of Tiller's intention statement. This was his initial intention statement to change water. And look at what he says. Let's read it. To activate the indwelling consciousness of the system. To him, the water was the system. He doesn't look at it as just a glass of water. He sees a lot of molecules bumping, vibrating, bouncing around, hitting the walls of the container. So he said, this is very, and I highlighted it in yellow, and I did that to say, to Tiller, things are not inanimate. To him, they were conscious things. Activate the indwelling consciousness. So just look at the statement that he's starting out with, recognizing that materials out there have consciousness. And then he said consciousness of the system, so that the intention host device decreased or increased the pH of the experimental water by 1 pH unit. And that's a huge signal. It's not 1.5 pH unit or 0.1 pH. No, 1 pH unit is a huge signal. I mean, to give you perspective, in the human body, the pH is 7.4, very tightly regulated. Half a pH up or down, I mean, it can kill you. So 1 pH unit is very, very significant. And this is the intention host device. I put it here to remind you that he realized you need something to hold that information that the human has created in a stable way. For the alkaline phosphatase, again, he starts with to activate the indwelling consciousness so that the thermodynamic activity of the liver enzyme alkaline phosphatase increases by a specific amount. And he actually wrote as much as possible. I took that little thing out, but it was really to activate the alkaline phosphatase by a measurable amount in the lab conditions. All right. And in comparison to unimprinted devices, which are control arm. And this was, again, the fruit fly, very detailed. It reads like a science experiment. But I want to call to attention, I've highlighted this in yellow. I found this very, very interesting when I read these. In medicine, whenever we do biology experiments, we do animal studies, we sacrifice the animal. And look at what Tiller wrote. To increase the fruit fly's robustness with ATP and all of these language, using the biology language as much as possible without harming the life function. That's incredible. Tiller is reaching deep into his own consciousness, into his own heart, and saying, I am going to do something to this animal system. I am interfering with it, but I want only the good to come out of it. And I found this really, I was really taken by this because I've never seen this. Actually, I've never seen this. And so he's a very magnificent mind. And, one day if I have time, or even in this session, when he visited my home in Los Angeles, he told me something around why, he was given literally a permission to do this experiment. And he said, every animal species has a guide. A guide. You have a guide, I have a guide, and the fruit fly has a DEVA, as he called it, DEVA. My gosh. I have a little sore throat, so my voice is a little croaky too, so I feel it, so forgive me. So this is the other thing that I emphasized in session 1. He always ended those intention statements with thy will be done. This is very significant. It was my editor, and it really hit me hard when I was editing the manuscript, and she said, this is the Lord's Prayer. And why, for some reason, all these years it was escaping me. I said, it's very pretty, very poetic, thy will be done. But we're talking about the Lord's Prayer here. Our Father, which art in heaven. And it's not who art in heaven, which art in heaven. It's a quality. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. So this is really amazing. Thy will be done on earth. Very significant. Hillary's saying, show me the truth, Father. Thy will be done. And if I'm in the image of the Creator, I want to see this creation process manifest in this lab. This was magnificent. But it also calls into something else. Scientists, we trust science. We want them to do right. So Taylor's intention statement in the fruit fly was very significant to me. And it also brings to mind that when you are testing consciousness, and in fact, one's own consciousness, where are you in that scale? Okay, where are you in that levels of consciousness? And what E.F. Schumacher calls, do you have the right stuff? Do you have the adequatio? Are you the real tool? Because a scientific mind itself is the tool. You're asking the question, you're making hypotheses, and you're testing them. And so Tiller, in my mind, not only had the tools of mathematics, of physics, of materials, but he had the adequatio of inner development. He had the meditation experience of 30 plus years by the time he came to do this, that he had the inner instruments and information structure that he was able to do this. So in a way, he had the consciousness of inner standing, not just understanding of the Lord's Prayer, but inner standing. He was ready to stand in the light of that spirituality. This is a very powerful way of approaching not just science, but all of life, all of life. And in Bridging Science and Spirit, I do write about some of the things he used to tell me. I said, so how do you decide? How do you make an intention? He always said, meditate first, then determine your intention. Gather all the details around your intention. So you can see with the fruit fly, ATP, ADP, he was gathering all the necessary biology, the details. Gather all details related to your intention and then write it down because it's intangible, it's invisible. Give it a physical purpose. Put it on paper. Remember, you're creating new information. And then make that intention, go and revise it, make it succinct. Don't be afraid to play around with the words, switch around the words till it feels right. And then visualize your intention with God as your partner. And in fact, Jean Tiller, who was the imprinting team, would often say, Nisha, I imagine the pH like a thermometer. It's climbing up. I can feel it in that imprinting session that would hold and visualize that intention. So whatever feels right for you, you want that bank balance, you want the job, you want whatever it is you want, visualize it with God as your partner. Release all doubt. Ask to be shown the truth. Thy will be done. End it there. Ask to be shown the truth. Repeat. Repeat for life and become Homo spiritus. We are Homo sapiens, but we are growing into something much more magnificent. And Tiller is saying, science is a way to self-knowledge. Science is also a way to know thyself. So this is why that consciousness scale. We don't want to get stuck in willingness and intellect. Open your heart, experiment in your life, and go into Christ consciousness, Buddha consciousness. there was one thing that when I went to Payson Tiller's labs, it was very evident to me that I was standing in the space of his labs with all these meters and computers. And I remarked to him, I feel really good here. I feel really rested. Like it was quite amazing because normally I'm a very high energy person and, always on the go and I get exhausted. So Tiller says, and he was twinkling, he says, now you are getting it. Now you're getting it because we didn't realize the conditions where the intention effects are magnified, where they're really big, they're huge, because whenever you hold a thought, it is having an effect, but it's small and you're changing your mind all the time. But in his experiments, Tiller stumbled into something that in fact changed how he holds his intention. And we'll come back to what his intentions actually, how they changed. But the physical conditions were when he was doing replications of his pH experiments, this is his water pH, just to remind you, he noticed that not only was the target changing, he was also monitoring the lab space itself. Because in thermodynamics, you need to know the conditions of the actual environment. All right, you need to see what are the things that are changing there in temperature of the air, of the water, and the pH, and so on. They're all being monitored in real time, 24 hours. And they found something very, very odd. This graph is actually his real data. You'll see on the vertical axis temperature in degrees centigrade, and on the horizontal axis you're seeing time in hours. And look at this spike. I mean, this rhythmic up and down. This is 3 degrees centigrade fluctuation, up and down, up and down, up and down. And he thought, what's this? He thought it was the air conditioner doing something. He's in Arizona. But it wasn't related to that. You would switch on and off the air condition. Was it diurnal temperatures at night? But they were actually very rhythmic. Morning, afternoon, evening, not related to air conditioning, not related to day and night. It was really odd. And these were continuing for thousands of hours. It was ongoing for, I would say, 4 or 5 years. They have dated that long. They didn't know what these were. And he said there were phantom waves. He was really flummoxed. He says, we didn't know what was going on, but it was very, very rhythmic. And he said, if it was air temperature, if it was air currents, then you can actually perturb the air very, very quickly with a fan. And so he turned on a fan. And guess what happened? They continued. It was not from air molecules, it was something else. And he realized that even the water temperature, again, very rhythmic, you can't see my cursor, but it was, hang on. Water temperature and the water pH, again, very rhythmic oscillations. And he took these waveforms and he did a mathematics on it. And this is a fast Fourier transform mathematics. You can take any waveforms, like, birdsong, I put that as an example. You can do Fourier transform and you get spectral analysis. You get this frequency picture, okay? And he did that with the lab, all of the temperature, the water, pH, and the air, the water, there was something else. Anyway, the third. But this is what happens. It nests. All of those signals actually nest into each other perfectly. It's like there was harmonics in this lab. It's like pumping. It was not only in the lab, but about 10 feet outside the door. It also monitored just the space just outside the door in the hallway. And so he said, this nesting harmonics, it's like if we had to hear the lab, if we had the ears to hear the lab, it was like music. the the lab was singing, okay? It was harmonics, it was pumping, it was throughout the lab. It was something I've never seen before. And it's not the air currents, it's not the air doing it, it's something else. And he realized something really magnificent. If it's not the air, he said, I think we were bumped into the physical vacuum. Physical vacuum means the absence of the word before the vacuum. Physical stuff, it's not there. And we know empty space is the most, you might say, the most prevalent part of nature. It's everywhere. You might think that the thing I'm sitting on, the chair, my body is solid, but physics will say it's mostly empty space. All right. And so he had bumped into Dirac's work, and Dirac has predicted antiparticles before they were even discovered. He also predicted magnets have not just a dipole magnet, but magnetic monopoles. So he thought, I think we're dealing with the physical vacuum. We are dealing with a different reality than ordinary physical things that we see every day. The physical vacuum is the key piece in Tiller's huge intention effects. Well, what do I mean by that? So let me take you through this graph. On the first part, you'll see conventional physics. This is where we see normal reality, okay? This is what he calls direct space. Conventional physics is operational here. All the laws of physics, thermodynamics are working just fine. And then what happens with human intention over time, the physical vacuum, the space starts to change. You get transitional physics until the space is fully conditioned. He called it reciprocal space. Fully conditioned. Now you're bumping into new physics. I went, okay. Because in his labs, it's not normal anymore. You're seeing pH do amazing things. He's making things manifest. Fruit flies, which are happier, enzymes, which are like workhorses and 15, 20% faster. His body is better, he's lighter. He used to do these sorts of things actually in Arizona. I'll do that next time in number 3, because it was amazing what he was able to do with just his intention. Control the temperature of his home, for example, and reduce his heating bill. Yeah, he was doing funky things. So intention works through physical space. That's a requisite. Then once you have a conditioned space, boom, your intention starts to manifest. And that's what he found, that initially the water experiments took 2 months, but then it went. It started to change, always in the direction of the intention. And so this is very fascinating. And then he says, well, then what are the characteristics of conditioned space? What are the characteristics? So he took water pH again, and he says, in nature, we always find magnets, which are dipoles. And Dirac said, he predicted magnetic monopoles. In other words, in normal space, in normal reality, we always have a north and south pole together. They're not separate, right? So he put an experiment where he put a magnet under the water vessel right here, north pole facing into the water, and then another experiment, same setup, with the south pole facing into the water. Now, normally north and south pole should have no effect on water pH. In normal reality, should not have any effect on the water pH. But this is what happened in his lab. I mean, this is fantastic. So Tiller showed that in a conditioned space with a magnet, which is south into the water, it is more alkaline, okay? You can see the pH starts to rise, but in North Pole into the water, it is acidic. Essentially, this is what you're seeing. This would never happen in a normal lab environment. This is not normal behavior, folks. So he said, conditioned spaces have a magnetic monopole effect. In effect, he actually found Dirac's magnetic monopoles. And I'll tell you, lots of science, physics labs have looked for magnetic monopole effects, and they've never really found it. And I think we're looking in the wrong place. Maybe we have to condition the space, and then we start to see that the magnet has effects on materials that are contained in that space. So he called it the space as symmetries. Okay, now this is very complex. I won't go into it in this session. I encourage you to read Bridging Science and Spirit. I do make it much, much more simple. I promise you it's really not that hard. Symmetry means, you know, you can have a snowflake, you can rotate it. It'll be, you know, you can rotate it a sixth of the way, and it has six-sided snowflake. It'll be symmetry. You can have a square and translate it and move it sideways. You still have a square. It's symmetrical. Like that, the space has symmetries within it. Even though we don't say it has north and south or east or west, we don't really recognize it. But physics actually has nomenclature with gauge symmetries. All right. So he called direct space D space and reciprocal space, a conditioned space, R space, okay? And he says there's a mirror relationship with it. So here's D space, which is things we see and measure. But I call it, you know, it's a fainter reality. The real reality is right here in reciprocal space. This is where it's informational. This is where the blueprint resides. It's magnetic information level and actually changes direct space. Okay, that's why it's in a dotted line. And the reciprocal space is actually where the blueprint is, and it's information waves. And this is the cartoon from my book. So reciprocal space is the thing to remember from all of this. Please remember, reciprocal space and direct space are linked to each other. They're different dimensions, and they're right here with us. The degree to which you have conditioned your space with your intention in your own home, okay, is what's relevant here. And you'll notice that if you go to your kitchen, your bathroom, your living room, they all have a different flavor to it, okay? So when you can condition your home space with your intention, you're really conditioning it. And this is what happens in certain gatherings. You gather, you pray, you condition it, you pump it up, you come back, you pump it up more, and you pump it all the time. And then information can also leak away. It's metastable and reaches back to equilibrium, okay? So this is the pH unit. And then we have to ask ourselves then, where did the energy come from? Remember we said, hey, is consciousness a source of free energy? Is intention a source of free energy? And Tiller's saying, yes, yes, it is. And where does it come from? The intention is tickling that physical vacuum, all right, pumping it up to our space, and it's the R space that gives that energy to the water, because he didn't add chemicals, he didn't add electric things to the water, he was just monitoring it. So it's the energy from the physical vacuum. And this is, again, a lot to wrap your head around, but just hold this thought, because this is crucial. This is where science has to go. We have to create these spaces in clinics, hospitals, healing spaces with specific intention, and we're right there. This is the very early work. So really what we're saying is mass and energy are related. We know that. Energy is related to information. Information is consciousness. Consciousness with intention is making that thing happen. You're creating it, you're writing it out, you're holding it, you're pumping your space, and things start to manifest. So that physical vacuum, how much energy is in there? And this is a picture of John Wheeler. He was at Princeton, and he did calculations of what is the energy potential in that physical vacuum, which does not have stuff. And he calculated that in a single hydrogen atom, which is here on your left, the physical vacuum of a single hydrogen atom has enough energy to surpass the whole cosmos by more than 8 trillion times. So, folks, the tip of your finger can light up Chicago, to give you a little perspective. The physical vacuum is enormous energy potential. Okay, that's where we have, we say we have energy shortages and, we have to limited resources. But I think what Tillery's saying, that once you have a way to hook up to the physical vacuum and you're doing it, then you're creating magic. Okay, you're elevating a whole new level of physics, which is unlimited. And I think because you are now conscious, you are creating things. So that's magnificent. And in fact, he talks about the garage effect. So this is again from my book. And Tiller says, just imagine there's a man, he's tinkering in his garage. He does this every day, every night after dinner, he goes into his garage and he's making a machine which is 100% energy efficient. Because thermodynamics says that's impossible. You're going to get entropy. But this man, with his creativity, his intention, goes into his garage and he's doing this and, does this for years. And then one day he's testing his machine and by golly, it's 100% efficient. And he calls his friends and he says, come on over, look at this machine. And they come on over. So he works with his heart. He's pumping his intention into the space. He lifts it to reciprocal space. There's excess free energy in that space because it's a physical vacuum. And rare events become more probable. The machines are different. This man's invention is different. So he calls his friends and they all come and they go, wow, George, this is amazing. And one of them says, we should really have it tested in the lab in the town, next town over. Make sure it works before we all pile our money and make a company and invest, right? So they go to this space or to this lab space in the next town and they test this machine out and they look at the results and they're very disappointed. Because in that space, it's not energy efficient, but it is in Georgia's. And this is the point about it. We can brighten the corner where we are. We are creating sacred spaces or new spaces with our intention. And if we do that, just imagine industry. What if you had to manufacture, I'm pulling things out of my head here, a supplement factory. Protein supplement factory, and they're conditioning that space in that factory, okay, with a device, pumping that space, and that product now is really wonderful, and whoever consumes it is healed by it. So we're not getting just a whey protein, we're getting a whole new type of whey protein. And that's what Tiller is trying to say, that we can create new materials with our intention, provided the space is actually conditioned to a reciprocal level. All right, and in part 3, I will describe how to test for that. how did he change his intention statement? Because he changed it. He says it's not just enough to say the target. And then he changed it to this, to activate the indwelling consciousness of this experimental space. Isn't that amazing? He took his discovery and incorporated into his intention statement. So folks, you could do that too. I activate the indwelling consciousness of my bedroom to a higher symmetry state, to a reciprocal state per Tiller physics, so that I can rest, that my biology, my body goes into a deep rest, that I may serve God, that thy will be done. I'm giving you an example, by the way, of intention statements. I write them all the time. And I teach my patients because I think what he's showing is that, wow, we are capable of much, much more. We're Homo spiritus. We're Homo sapiens, just, crawling around in kindergarten right now. And we're looking to science to show us the next rung in the ladder. Well, he's saying, okay, we're not tied to electromagnetism. We are now moving to magnetic monopole effects. Dirac has predicted them. We are showing it in our space. They're real, even if physics has not shown them, because they're looking in ordinary spaces. So, we're coming, I hope to, I don't know. I have a paper describing the symmetry of the spaces. It's a little bit more detailed, actually a lot more detailed. And, I will be actually pulling this paper in a couple of weeks. So I encourage you to go get this paper. And there is a original photograph in that paper that the reviewer said should be published. And that paper, that photograph, I should say, calibrates so high on that consciousness scale. It's like you're looking at Buddha. I mean it, okay? So people have said, I look at this photograph and I feel something. So please pick it up. It's my gift to you. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to switch out to something else, but I want you to go and get this scientific paper. And it's in nishamanekmd.com. My voice is a bit hoarse now, so sorry about that, but thank you. I did it in an hour and I rushed through it, but okay, there we are.
That is fantastic. Oh my gosh, Nisha, thank you so much. I love how you have arranged this information. I don't know, this is like all these light bulb moments going off for me in just the way you've presented it. It's really brilliant. And I'm really grateful. So for the people, if you have typed a question between 7:40 and 7:45, just know that I was booted off Zoom, which is happening more and more these days, and I had to reconnect and the chat disappeared. I know that Durga was asking about the reference for the chart, the energy chart.
Oh, yes.
That's Dr.
Bridging Science and Spirit. Get the book. It's all there.
Yes. Okay.
I get the chart, and I'll tell you this: whenever you hold a loving intention, you're actually uncovering your own consciousness. You're raising your consciousness. That's our job here on planet Earth. Yes, we get up, we eat nice foods, we watch Netflix, and I present this. Ultimately, you wrap your intention around everything. Brush your teeth, thy will be done. Sit and go. And when I say to my patients, hi, I'm Dr. Manek, and in my mind, I say, thy will be done. It somehow changes something. It does. It shifts.
Absolutely.
This is a tool. Durga, the reference, and it's fully referenced. My book has, 300 references in all the papers, and then many of them are free. You can go, some of them are books, but you'll be able to go back and get every resource you need. It's in the book.
So Jerry had some questions he wants to ask you.
Yeah.
You're unmuted, I think, Jerry. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Love your talk, and I love both talks, Nisha. And I just thought I'd mention a couple of things. I play around with science a lot, and I do a lot of experiments too. And I've been reading other things, and some of the things that you mentioned. There's a guy by name of Simon Schnoll. I don't know if you know about him. And he did about 30 years of experiments in which he looked at radioactivity, enzyme reactions, and all sorts of other reactions, and noticed that the same thing that you noticed, the rhythmic effects of things, but everything was affected exactly the same way. So radioactivities, sometimes it should be, the same, but it'd go down and up, and it'd be that way in every city. It wasn't just located in one place. And so the purpose of my stating that is that something may be happening on a universal level on a lot of these
Lovely.
are happening. So I thought that you enjoyed that. And another thing that I've noticed is that I can create fields. I've been playing around with fields for the past couple of years and creating fields, and I can do that. I can use monatomic elements, whether it be copper, ormus, or whatever it is, and you can create fields that have harmony in it, and it has what's called BG3 from biogeometry, if you're familiar.
Okay, yeah.
And so you can do that, and you can play around in those fields in very interesting ways. You can move fields and do things with intention. So I just thought I'd mention some of these things that go along with exactly what you're saying,
Yes.
from slightly different angles, but goes along very well. And so I'm really appreciating what you're doing, and would love to have more conversations with you on the subject.
Oh, you're right on. So reciprocal space is so cool because it's a field. It's a field effect. You're absolutely right. And the more and more you've pumped your space to reciprocal, it's you have no connection or full on connection. So it's 0, no, and 1, full connection. So your direct space is now behaving really, it's different physics. And what Tiller has shown, and I didn't go because it's so much material. Even this is like, I thought I might confuse people. I'm giving thermodynamics and pH and, but what he showed was that in reciprocal space, it's a field effect, and you have connectivity, entanglement effects. That's faster than the speed of light. It's faster than the speed of light, and it's beyond this notion of time and space as we know it. We're describing, those are rulers, if you like, to help us understand materials in the direct space. But you're right, I think reciprocal, it's everywhereness, okay? And that's what you're saying, it's everywhereness, and that's what Tiller saw.
Yeah, and in addition to that, you can condition the space with chemicals like ormus and other monatomic things, and the whole space will change and will remain elevated in a certain way. And it's really a very interesting phenomenon.
That's true. And so, in a sense, crystals, quartz holds information. That's why people put crystals around, where they're healing or their home for decoration. But actually, it's holding information, will change the space. And if they're sensitive enough, they will feel it. I feel things in crystals very quickly. And so I'm careful. I think those materials need cleansing. They can hold a lot of stuff. So I use the Tiller device, and next week I'll describe, or session 3, how I imprinted with the information of the Buddha's relics, because they came to my home, and I took the device and put it with the relics, and I created my own holy object, which is still going strong now, 10 years later. So something about it is really fascinating, that my intention to lovingly capture something of that loving kindness, because it was so powerful, it just left me completely dizzy that I still have it. And I keep the device, I take care of it. So, and it's just a black box. You can have a picture. That's why I said the paper is very important, because that picture is like a holy object. Once you give meaning to it like that, then you open your eyes to look around you, that things have meaning. They have inherent beauty and consciousness. So Tiller really opened my eyes to that. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. That was just outstanding.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Terry. You mentioned early on, you said something about that each species has a deva,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm really fascinated with this concept. In December, we had Timothy Haas from the Lorien Foundation come, and he talked about this. And in terms of, sort of devas and overriding spirits and subtle energy intelligences.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if, could it be that devas are the intelligences within this conditioned space, within this higher vibrational space, that
Yes.
you're actually partnering or communicating with an intelligence within that space?
Absolutely. When Tiller gives lectures in his early days, when people took pictures, there were orbs around him.
Right.
There were orbs. And this Deva story, he came to my home. I invited him for lunch. He was giving a lecture at a conference. And I said, you're in LA, I'll come and pick you. Come and meet my family. And so he's having a conversation quite innocently at the table. And I was washing dishes. And he said something about Devas gave me permission. I spun around and I said, what do you mean Devas gave you permission? He says, oh, you know about Devas, right? And I said, DEVA? He says, yeah, they're guiding spirits. He says, when I wrote the intention for the fruit fly to make them more robust, I had a dream, or I was visited by the Deva of the fruit fly, who said, the well-being of the fruit fly is our responsibility, but you're not harming them. We give you permission. I thought, this is ridiculous. I remember, I'm sharing with you something really intimate for Tiller. He never talks about these things.
Absolutely.
So he was truly in communication with the unseen. The book I'm writing now is when Tiller says, Nisha, I'm not here by myself and Jean, we're helped by the unseen. I once said, what is this unseen? What is it? And he said, he gave me 3 names. And I didn't know, I only recognized 1 out of the 3. And the other 2 I thought were cartoon characters. It sounded like that. So right now I'm unpacking it and I realize, whoa, thermodynamics, entropy, energy, divine, it's all connected. Folks, believe me, it's not just quantum theory, which is just theoretical, but quantum science is very advanced. But I think Tiller says thermodynamics gets us there. We can measure these things. Yeah.
And when you were showing the graph of the fluctuations within the air temperature in the lab, and I was looking at that coherence, that really, it reminded me of HeartMath's work on heart rate variability, and that state of coherence.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly. Yes. So in other words, human intention, very focused with the physical vacuum, it coheres it, shapes it.
Yes.
Increases coherence, because we think of the physical vacuum as destructive, all these energies, there's no physical stuff. And then when you get coherent, you can get electrons out of it. This is what Dirac predicted, by the way. He said cosmic ray would come, hit the physical vacuum, and out pops an electron. That was the Dirac equation. And then you have to account for the whole. And that was a positron, a positive mass exactly equivalent to an electron with an opposite charge, antimatter. And so he found that, the vacuum is empty, but it has potential. And the potential comes with us. We are creating it. we're able to manipulate it. And we're just at the very beginning stages.
Absolutely.
There are many gauge symmetries. Okay, where SU, there's direct and reciprocal, but then there are many levels.
And we're with intention reduces entropy within the field, right?
Yes, exactly.
It introduces information, reduces entropy. That
right.
makes so much sense to me. I think that's wonderful. Okay, so let me get to questions, other people's questions. Curious about the scale of consciousness comic. Oh, the scale of comics. That's Richard Dawkins.
It's David Hawkins.
David Hawkins.
Yeah. He calls it the map of consciousness, and I adopted his scale. You can make your own, actually. And basically what I want to get across here is that to speak about consciousness and just leave it there, consciousness is everything, is not enough. We have to look at the qualities, the attributes of consciousness. All right, you have consciousness of willingness, consciousness of courage, consciousness of intellect, consciousness of love. And even that is not enough. Consciousness of unconditional love, and so on. Tiller is absolutely unconditional loving kindness. I found that in the first meeting. I told you I could feel it, and I was just amazed that this man held A Course in Miracles. Who would bring this magnificent book to a physicist? But they were guided to do so. And I think Tiller is very rare that way. So the map of consciousness helped me understand where Tiller was. And I wasn't going to be in the 400s anymore. I wanted to be in the 500s, somebody who operates from the heart level. Okay. Right. So, and the levels are just there. It's from 0, death, to 1,000. 1,000 is where, and it's an infinite scale, infinite dark, infinite light. It's just love is the quality. And 1,000, because beyond 1,000, you don't need a physical body. You'll just evaporate. The body is so coarse, it cannot handle higher energies. You're going to be into angelic forms. Okay, you go into high. You don't need a body. No body there. Okay.
The second part of this question, it says something about why is medicine indicated at the gradation that it was, and something about the profession of medicine. I think it was more implied to be healing, that healing was a higher vibration, not a profession per se.
Exactly. So medicine actually is in the intellect, as I understand it, as I practice it. I analyze things. I fragment things. You have a knee joint, I x-ray your knee joint, I do uric acid, and I check a sed rate, and I tell you what's wrong with you. That's compartmentalization. A rishi might say, "Ooh, your knee hurts. Why don't you love your knee? But get the doctor to sort it out." You're not separate from, you see what I mean? Right. It's a very different language. So I come from the intellect, linear. Tiller comes from the 500s, non-linear. The jump is from 499 to the 500s. And because the intellect holds you back. The intellect is going to hold you back. It's the homo dubitat, the doubting man.
Can you remind us how those measurements for people who haven't read Hawkins?
Oh yes, so 0 to 1,000, and each point is logarithmic based 10. So each time you move up in a point, you're increasing your power by 10. Okay, tenfold. So at 499, that's pretty powerful. Doctors, I mean, we're intellectual, right? We're juggling, analyzing, medical school. Well, I'm just going. But when you're in the heart level, you give meaning to more things. Your bandwidth expands. So 499, you go to 500, that's 499, 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 is 499 times, right? It's a huge number. You add one more point, boom, you're in the 500s, you're different. It's exponential, it just goes way up.
And how is this measured?
So David Hawkins, it's a semi-quantitative scale. He measured it with muscle testing. And again, I give a reference for muscle testing in the book. This is scientific. It's not woo-woo or crap. And I think medicine is going that way. And I give references for that too. That medicine is finding out that you can augment the effects of reciprocal space in your body. Our space is the acupuncture system, higher symmetry. Okay, it's already in your body. If you put a magnet, now just think about all those magnet healers and all that. What happens? You augment the energy flow. So magnets are actually really, really important. Okay. So where was I? Anyway, so 500, 600 is enlightenment, and you can keep going. So 1,000 is Christ, Avatar, Buddha, Krishna. Those are avatars, very high. Beyond that, you're getting into the angelic forms and so on.
Excellent. Thank you. James wants to know, as a rheumatologist, what, if any, correlation have you seen between autoimmunity specifically and the patient's mental state at onset, particularly as it pertains to early trauma resolution?
Yeah, so does stress cause autoimmune disease? I think that's what he's asking. No, it doesn't. We'd have an epidemic of autoimmune diseases. We're all stressed to some degree. But I will say this, that whenever you have trauma, physical, mental, emotional, any trauma, and you have, or you're coming, this often happens when they have an established diagnosis of an autoimmune disease, it'll become more active. There's no question. I get more phone calls around Thanksgiving and Christmas, okay? I do. But once they know intention, those phone calls stop. I teach them these things so that they know how to self-regulate themselves. But it also comes to the other question I think this person is asking. Does stress actually incite autoimmune diseases? Well, people have asked me this so many, I moved home and there was mold in the basement. I got RA. I was doing this and my mother-in-law hit me on the head and I got RA the next day. I don't think there's a connection. We have really looked at this in many, many ways. What are the triggers? What are the risk factors? I would say stress, and that is something that exacerbates it but didn't cause it. I hope that helps.
Mm-hmm. Yes, excellent. Okay. Linda is interested in hearing more about your thoughts of the light body, perhaps the body our consciousness moves to upon final transition from life to what we call death.
Yeah. So you're jumping ahead to level 3 of my talk number 3 because you're right. She's absolutely right. When we drop the physical, this course physical, I'm not an expert in afterlife and all that, but we're not really dead. Consciousness does not die. It survives physical death. Consciousness survives physical death. And the more conscious you were on Schoolhouse Earth, this is Schoolhouse Earth right now. We're learning so many lessons, yes? This Schoolhouse Earth is very tough. It's very tough, folks. We are challenged. Life happens. Everything is thrown at you. It's thrown off Zoom to everything is going on. Mother-in-law shouted at you and the taxman's knocking on your door. So Schoolhouse Earth is really, really a tough game to play. But if you are a conscious human being and you leave the physical, when I think you do come back. This isn't the only life. Krishna talks about it. Buddha talks about the many lives, that you're coming back with a higher bandwidth. You're not going to learn the same lessons again. So that's why I say have forgiveness about everything. So you don't have to keep learning the same old crap. You want to go quickly up that scale because it's just more fun. Really, it is.
Amen. Okay, so I have some questions from YouTube. Oh, so people are asking, they're going to your website, trying to find that article. Is there, and they're not able to find it. So is there a drop-down menu or something that they
No,
should...
my virtual assistant was looking at MailChimp today. So it's possible she may have done something. So go on Monday. I will
Okay.
I'll tell Janelle, what happened there? Because we could see it. I could see that the paper is there because I'm going to switch it out. That paper, and in case something happens, I will send it to you, Judy, at the lecture number 3, because I think you should all have it. There's powerful information for some people. When they look at it, they shift. I don't know what it is. I like I said, all I know, it's nonlinear. They're taken into a state of consciousness. Maybe they're ripe. They've done enough work. They've looked at enough books, enough crystals. Boom, they're right there.
So Durga raised her hand. I want to get her to speak. She wanted to talk about an ADMX experiment. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But
No.
Durga, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, or you can go ahead and speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Nisha. I mean, this is just fascinating. It's just an experiment that actually the article was written in the National Geographic a couple of weeks ago, I would say. And, it's an instrument that they've built in these labs that apparently has a magnetic field that is 250,000 times stronger than the field of Earth. And I put in the question a quote, one of the scientists who's working on this, how he feels about, how he feels when he sits next to the experiment. I mean, next to this instrument. And it was really interesting to hear that he used the word emotional state, that he was so happy sitting next to that instrument, right? That has this amazing magnetic power. And the purpose of the instrument is actually to capture the axions. But, so anyway, I don't think they have captured it. It's obviously they're trying it. But all of these, since I've been following, similar sort of ideas, it made me wonder. So when I lost my dad, I was with him when he, breathed his last. I could feel his energy around him, even after he had passed, right? I was like, oh, he's still around here. He's not gone. And so I think to what you were just saying is, we don't die there, right? And
Yes, you're absolutely right. Just have a big adventure on planet Earth, but there's bigger stuff. Grow in consciousness, because then you are in other, because there are levels. You will go to those levels. That's David Hawkins' work. He says that if you're in a forgiving soul, you've learned these lessons, you're not going to learn them again. Spirit doesn't do that. So it only gives you what you need this lifetime, and learn it, and then you can evolve. And so in your next incarnation and the next one after that, you are always going home to Krishna consciousness, or Buddha consciousness. Yes. So the avatars, it's all the same. There's no separation in these faiths. Love is the ultimate condition. But I'm so glad you had that experience. You're absolutely right. I have had the same with my loved ones. When they pass, I sense their perfume. I sense their presence physically, and I even look around like I'm sure they were there. So it's like a guide, and talk to him.
Yeah.
He will help you with your intentions.
Thank you.
I love that. Okay, so another question from YouTube. Isn't there a reversal of time and frequency in our space since it's superluminal?
Yes, it is inverse. So things that are very far are actually right there. We think in physical distances. So when Tiller holds an intention to heal someone, say in Australia, they feel it right away. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So whoever's that, they're right.
So there's a question about the paper that you mentioned in part 1 as well. Is that still up? Because looks like people are wanting to go back and get that one too.
Oh, it's the same paper.
Oh, it's the same paper.
I kept it there for people who are interested, and they visit my site. So it was a gift. for my readers of my book. And now I realize I'm going to change it out. But that paper is so magnificent. It is scientific, but I told you that picture.
It's
Next in session 3, I will tell you what the reviewers. These are science people. When I send a manuscript, I'm anonymous. They don't know who this author is, and they look and they give revisions and all that. It was fascinating to hear or to read what they were writing. And I realized I'm onto something. This is so important. And they actually published it. It was peer reviewed in 2012. I was at Mayo at the time in a Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine, because I told you it opens the whole doorway to many industries, foods, hospitals, clinics, healing space, yoga studios, Starbucks, anything, Yeah.
Right. Yeah, we could really shift the consciousness.
Yes, we can.
So Deborah is saying that on your website she can see the Buddha relics paper. Is that the same as the Symmetry of Space paper?
Yes, that's it.
That's okay. And is the paper called The Symmetry of Space?
Yes.
Okay. So
it's got a long title. So it's a new dimension, or I should say, a new clue to human consciousness. I'm saying it's not the brain. I'm saying it's something more. We are much, much more than the physical body. We have to expand beyond the physical. Yeah.
That seems to be really the kind of unifying theme of everything that's coming through right now, right? Through channeled works, through science, through consciousness research, through even UFO research. It really seems to come back to this idea that, and it's kind of like we're being hit over the head with this idea we're more than we think we are.
Yes.
And it's time for us to step into that knowing and really partner with the energies that we are not perceiving right now to bring some healing onto this planet.
Here's what I would say also. It's a very good point that these are invisible, but they're very powerful. They're informational, okay? They have energy, but they're informational. They can be dark stuff too. Here's the thing. Whenever we are, say this talk, and when I first heard David Hawkins, you're changed, something's inspired, and he says, you will get into the exploratory phase. You'll do crystals and books and tarot readings and all this stuff. Don't get caught up. Ultimately, do what Tiller did. Tiller is saying, Father, his practice every day starts with the Psalms and the Lord's Prayer. That's why I put it up there. He has the adequation. He built himself. He wasn't an outer condition anymore. It wasn't, let me play with this. No, the play was done. The play was done. I'm in my lab. This is the play now. Show me the truth. So I just mentioned that because you will be intrigued and pulled in many directions. Get over that phase quickly. If you have to go explore and go to Sedona and all that, do it quickly. Ultimately, you're going to meditate, uncontemplate, and start it. Do it, really. Expand your consciousness.
Love it. Okay, this will be the last question for this evening. Linda wants to know, do you believe that at some point we do not incarnate?
Probably. When there's no need, when you're dissolved into the field of love, there's no need. There's no separation. Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta means Advaita Veda, Anta, end of it. No need to speak anymore. Silence. Right. You are. That's it. I am that. even me using the words is useless.
You know what? I with apologies to Deborah because I skipped her question. Okay. What is Tiller's definition of information? And if
information is not just digital. I gave the diet example that, energy and information are so connected. You can eat French fries and that you're missing information. So information comes into this light bulb above my head as a certain spectrum. I make sure it's full spectrum. I don't like fluorescent lights because that's information, a certain, 500 nanometer spectrum. I don't want that. I don't eat certain things because that's information. I don't eat processed foods. That's information. So Taylor's definition of information is much broader. And actually physics agrees with that. That's the fundamental unit. Information shapes energy. Information coheres that energy. I gave the example of the messy office. You need information to direct that energy. Your intention is playing out too then.
So information is sort of a structured energy
Yeah,
that,
you're coloring it. You're coloring it. Yeah.
right, that acts on its environment.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what Tiller, did he say, information equals? Did he have a phrase to define information, or is it just it by its action?
I think it's a bit of both. And Tiller says, Nisha, we shall explore the boundary conditions of the various types of information, but ultimately it's all information, which is, so even the scale of consciousness is informational. So a person at 500 has a certain being, that's information. He radiates things. Master Jesus at 1,000 doesn't even have to say anything, and we get it. That's informational. Does that help you? Yeah.
This anonymous attendee says information is that which informs matter.
I like that too.
I like that too.
Yeah.
And I think we can end it there. So your website is up here, nishamanekmd.com. And go back on Monday, or no, the paper's up there.
Okay,
good. Up there. It's one paper. It includes information on the Buddha relics, and it's on the symmetry of space. So
and there's one picture I want you to all look. I mean, and in part 3, we because it's bridging science and spirit, it's like Buddha himself gave me a hand and said, there we are. Okay, and I got it. I said, oh, we got to test the relics of Buddha with space, and I'll describe it next time and how you can do that. Okay.
Right. So remember in part 1, she talked about these relics of Buddha, and so she's going to go into that a little more in part 3, which is 2 weeks from tonight, June 25th, and I'll send out an announcement tonight or tomorrow.
That is the funnest one, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's all spirit. Whenever you look at something, people would come and say, I looked at all your sites, but I feel something so shift. And I say, these are holy objects. This is truth of a very high kind. I just talk about it, but I know what I feel. So I think it's the juiciest part.
Well, the intellect is fun, but the felt sense
is the best. Yeah.
Is the best, right? It's just, it's expansive.
It leaves you transformed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So wonderful. Thank you so much. This has been a delight. And I look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.
Okay. Bye-bye and good night, everyone.
Thanks everyone for joining us.
Okay. Bye-bye.